So, hi, I'm Matt,
I'm June.
and you're listening to another
Episode
of
of
Architecture, the architecture podcast. So, today, rather this year, 2019, is actually the 100-year anniversary of Bauhaus. And since we actually study, not exactly in Bauhaus, but next to Bauhaus, we decided to talk about this. What is the Bauhaus movement? And just give you a bit of an introduction first.
So basically, I will slightly introduce Bauhaus, just in case some of you who doesn't know. But apparently, of course, it's not possible that people who study in art or architecture doesn't know about this terminology.
If you're interested in listening to us, you definitely know what is Bauhaus.
Yes.
But a more in-depth version of it, because even doing research about this, I actually found quite a few fascinating things.
Definitely, this Bauhaus actually branched out to a lot of field outside, not only art and architecture. Okay, so I'll start. Okay, Bauhaus is founded by watergroupers in the year of 1919. To be exact, it's April 1st, 1919. It's not April Fool, but in Weimar, Germany.
Can you imagine? I opened this school. April Fool! Oh, no.
Okay. So from my understanding and research, you could say Bauhaus is an introduction to modern art. But correct me if you think something else. Okay, but how was the movement begun? After the World War, the country Germany is trying to rebuild itself, and so the founder Walter Gropius see this as an opportunity to redesign and transform the German city. But because the word Bauhaus is from German pronunciation, easily we could thought that it's building and architecture. Okay, a small German lesson, because I've learned a bit of German. Okay. Bau in German, which means build or building, and Haus meaning house. So when you join them together, it's like building houses. But this is like the most obvious term that you could thought of. But actually, this is not just about building houses. Actually, the Bauhaus idea is way more than building, but also a new way of thinking design, also influencing the art in a way that more scientifically study, that influencing the graphical, the art, the colors, the product, and what else? The products and the daily music that we hear, and even dance. Okay, so further on, the school in Weimar started the Bauhaus idea actually through music, instrumental, and dancing, and also carpentry. So you can see a lot of like these furnitures we are using now. Most likely they're influenced during that time by this Bauhaus idea.
Yeah, basically Walter Gropius, he introduced, basically his thoughts was what he said anyway. He wanted to teach this thing called Gesamtkunstwerk, which is total art work, direct translation.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's basically what he's saying is that he wants to combine everything together. Technically, it's something like combination of art, technology, architecture, music. It's not just one. It's like before the Bauhaus movement, it was like architecture is just architecture, and then art is art. It's like, so he wanted to kind of join these fields together and teach.
But what he really want to do at that time is like a new movement that actually combine these three.
Yeah. So basically, what you study now in architecture is technically started through this Bauhaus movement. It's like the combination of arts and architecture and technology together. Yeah. So
but of course we talk so much about like how they influence, but maybe you couldn't like capture how it actually influenced in our daily life. Okay, for example, like I would say the most common things about the font. The words that we read every day, we see every day, from the road banner, the ads, the phone, text in your phone, like all these kind of things. So during that time, Gropius created a new typeface that actually influenced what we see today.
What font is that?
It's not the specific font, but it's that kind of font that influenced. We have the font now we are using nowadays, like Arial, Times New Roman, Helvetica. Okay, this is like the example. That time, Gropius was so his movement was so radical. His idea was so radical that the people actually rejected him.
Yeah, that's normal.
Yeah, for example, during that time, after the World War, the German, they want to like rebuild their country. So the nationalism, they actually kind of reject Gropius' movement. The Gropius and his team of architects and designer, their thinking, because they think that this is very un-German. Okay, for example, because the font that I mentioned just now was so modern, I mean, it's modern compared to that time. The font that the German they're using at that time was named as Fractal. Okay, I mean, where do you see this font? Because I live in Berlin, so I actually see this. I really see this font when I read these articles, and I feel really like I can feel that the sense of that time and what Gropius was doing back then were totally a different kind of two different world or two different era. Because the fractal was influenced by the Gothic design as Gothic art as well, so they was kind of like very German, but compared to what Gropius doing was totally a new thing, which is why I mentioned it was a radical movement.
Yeah, like can you imagine like the movement before Bauhaus movement is the Art Nouveau?
Yeah,
and if you didn't know, it's very flowery. There's a lot of it's basically Art Nouveau kind of influenced by
Renaissance.
Kind of.
That.
I mean, it's like there's a lot of nature things in Art Nouveau, and if you see like the railings of Art Nouveau, it's always very curvy and you know all these things. Although I actually read that the Bauhaus movement is also influenced by Art Nouveau.
I mean, definitely in some way, it's not a new thing that Gropius come up with, because it's just a new system that Gropius would try to transform the city at that time into a new period of how we actually see art and also science, and also this is why they actually try to move. He and his like architect teams actually try to come up with something that.
Yeah, but basically before Art Nouveau, it was the industrial era where like you know everything is standardized, and that's why they had the Art Nouveau thing, because everything was too standardized. But maybe they went too far, and Bauhaus actually tried to put it back in the middle, kind of things. Like, I mean, in my opinion, maybe some people would think Art Nouveau looks better, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a preference thing. But I would say because the industrialization, and then we come back to Art Nouveau, and then we come back. Not to come back. I mean, we come up with
find
another
a balance
Bauhaus.
about it, because basically Bauhaus is talking about like finding the beauty in this industrial thing. Not really just
It's not
really just industrial, but like,
also a beautiness of this industrial, which is why we always say we could heard like forms follow function.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I mean, it started from Bauhaus movement.
Yeah.
Although it's not Walter Gropius, it's Louis Sullivan. But
Okay, okay, but I mean further on, I would say I'll still talk about the background. So after the rejection, I mean Walter Gropius was rejected. 3 schools in Germany were closed down. The one was in Dessau, the Bauhaus Dessau, Bauhaus Weimar, and also in Berlin. So although they were being closed down, but the idea of Walter Gropius has already spread around the world. And after that, he actually end up moving to Massachusetts, and he in the Harvard University. And in that university, he actually he involved himself in the architecture department, and slowly he actually trying to bring out the culture, continue his philosophy and idea in that department as well. We could say that he acts as a cultural ambassador to influence the way of thinking and design and architecture.
Yeah, I mean, even as said, it started in Weimar. Actually, I'm not very sure about this, but I actually read that, I mean, it opened in Weimar in 1919.
Yeah.
And then they moved to Dessau, apparently.
And because they were the government at that time, the party at that time, actually they didn't want to
in Weimar.
So they tried to move to Dessau
and Berlin, actually.
Yes.
And then they were forced to close in 1933, which
it
actually
lasts only like
technically the school only lasts 24 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's influenced until now. Although that's just the origin of it, because as you said, they went to US and I mean,
but how he actually, I mean, it could be origin in Germany, but how it actually spread through the world.
I think it's true, yeah. Mostly through like US and.
I mean, definitely it's because people like it, and not only people, but the commercial like it, and this is the only way that could actually helps in influencing the Bauhaus idea throughout the whole world.
Yeah, and this thing also basically gave birth to the international style, if you know, like for example the Seagram building. Just for information, he is also one of the the head of Bauhaus at the time. Yeah, Mies van der Rohe. Do you have anything else to add for the introduction? I mean,
somehow what we see today now, what we see nowadays, how designer play with the Bauhaus ideology. As you can see, it's like something about influenced by color, the three simple color, the simple geometry, and
that's
even,
basically the characteristics of Bauhaus movement.
And even lines. But because the combination of this, somehow the outcome become very abstract. So actually, some people, not every people liked it, but you couldn't deny that these are the fundamentals that actually influence what we are using today and what we see today.
Yeah.
So it's actually, at that time, actually it creates like a benchmark, not to say benchmark, but a new criteria of judging the sense of beauty and also the functionality. Yeah.
I mean, the characteristics basically, as you said. So another thing they will say is they implement this thing called true to materials, which is basically being honest. I mean, being honest as an architect, and not to hide the steel or the beams or columns or something like that. Is to actually show it in a way that makes it beautiful. I think a really good example is like the Mies van der Rohe's buildings, like the Farnsworth House. It's like he doesn't hide any of the elements. It's all there, and it is actually part of the whole design. It's not like the columns are there just for the support. The columns are there for support, and it also looks part of the building. I mean, it looks good anyway.
I would say it's actually
part of the design.
Creating a soul to a dead object, which is you actually feel it's not just it functions for or because of column, but in the sense that you actually feel its existence is very important because he worked more than just a column to support the house, but another way. So this is what the ideology behind.
To me, the core thing that I learned from the Bauhaus movement is basically this thing is it says that art could be beautiful without ceasing to be useful, and that's what I feel the whole Bauhaus movement is about.
Maybe because we were born during this era, so we actually feel this more compared to if you study like architecture history, we have like Art Nouveau, Renaissance,
there's
Gothic,
of course a lot of
back then a lot of
there's a lot of different styles. We are not actually born in that era.
We were using the product that influenced during that time back to now.
But it's still relevant today.
Definitely
in this way. So that's why I actually wanted to ask this question since we are done talking about the Bauhaus introduction. So it's like, in your opinion, I mean, if let's say you manage to enter, or let's say you can start a school, would you consider teaching the Bauhaus way of teaching, like
experimenting?
Not experimenting. It's like this characteristics. Would you want to actually teach this method? Because the reason why I thought about this question is that I actually talked to my professor, which is the head, not the head, the director of DIA, the South International Architecture, which is beside Bauhaus. That's why I actually asked him this question. It's like, why do you not want to teach? Because he's the director and he can actually implement this. Why does he not want to teach like just the Bauhaus movement since it's so big? And he actually kind of like disagree and say that it is, although it's still relevant today, it should not be the only style of architecture architects learn now. I mean, that's why I'm wondering about
I don't know. I mean, after I read through some articles and my own self opinions, like I wouldn't say Bauhaus is a movement, but it's more than just a philosophy that actually influenced everything. A revolution compared than just a movement. Because, for example, we have Industrial Revolution or Art Nouveau. But Bauhaus is more than that because it combines the art and the science, come up with an outcome that we actually see in nowadays. So if you ask me that I would actually teach the next generation about this, Bauhaus movement or what, but I wouldn't say that we must teach them, but it's an introduction to them that how probably the next generation, the next revolution could be happening. Maybe, but how would you see like 100 years later, Bauhaus is also like a history that back in now, and maybe in future we have something like a more utopian or whatever. Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's a must, but definitely it's still just a introduction that everyone should know, fundamentals that everyone should know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I actually agree, because I mean, if it's me, I would actually try to kind of teach the core of what it's not like I'm trying to tell them that this, I feel that it's especially relevant in this day, now that, I mean, there's so many housing, I mean, I'm not really sure about a lot of places, but in KL specifically, like nowadays people tend to build like 50-story high condominium of all units of houses, which if you think about it, if you don't, I mean, it's useful, of course. I mean, you can stay there, but people never thought about, I mean, when you're designing this, you think about how this column will actually look. I mean, a lot of them would just put the columns so that you can stand, you know.
But how this like these 50 or high rises come out with is actually the influence of Bauhaus as well. You see the building that we actually see every day in that side of Bauhaus. You see the facade, the glass facade. This actually influences how high rises nowadays. You see, like, because
but the thing is, it's not really very Bauhaus anymore, because the Bauhaus building, the whole glass facade is actually useful. It's actually there for a reason, and it's useful basically, and that's their style. But in KL, if you make a whole full glass, it just looks
exactly. I couldn't say
good. You know, it's not really Bauhaus.
You couldn't say it's totally a Bauhaus style. That's why I would say it's the base, it's the fundamental of Bauhaus movement that actually influence what we have today.
I feel that actually a lot of people don't really get this. It's like they think Bauhaus movement is just the looks of it, and you just replicate it. It looks nice. That's all. I mean, this is Bauhaus. You know? I feel that's totally against what Bauhaus is actually trying to teach.
It's way more than architecture. I would say it's not just building, but also
it's the thinking. That's why actually I was reading also. The Bauhaus movement is not only something that leads to good architecture. It also leads to, I mean, how modern art, and more importantly, is the modern thought, how people think about such things. Yeah, so I feel that's even more important. I mean, the more important thing that Bauhaus brought is the modern thought, like how people think about how to design, rather than just to make it look nice. You know, it's like things has to be useful and also look nice at the same time. Yeah. So I feel that's the most important thing to teach
in art school or
I mean
whatever.
Wherever. I mean, although we are very architecture based now, we study architecture all the way up to masters and whatnot, but I feel this thing actually goes towards other things as well. I mean, other fields as well. Why not? I mean, it is a way of thinking rather than a way of building, a way of design.
Yeah, you see a lot of like this Germany product back in those days. They were so, I mean, even now you could see this product actually comes made in Germany or whatever, because they were so deeply influenced by this Bauhaus where its origin. For example, like the furnitures, the car design. You see Mercedes and BMW, they're from Germany. You can see the shape of the car is so
aerodynamic.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a adapt of the size and design.
Yeah, actually, if you think about
so,
it.
I mean, in the background, you could actually think of it's the influence of Bauhaus, which form follow functions, and also like art follows by science, or science followed by art. This kind of thing.
It's a combination.
Yeah.
Especially if you see cars. No, I mean, not only BM and
yeah, I mean,
Mercedes,
of course, this is the theory. Like, yeah.
If you see cars like the Ferrari and Lamborghini, I mean, they basically have a lot of these aerodynamic things. If you see their videos, like here's aerodynamic, you know, air flows through and whatnot, all these shit things. But in the end, it looks good, you know.
Exactly. They're not just like, okay, it's either I focus on beauty and then I kind of like lack out the function. But or I focus on the functional part, but in the end I just forgot about the beauty. So it's a balance and also a combination of both. Yeah.
And actually, maybe another question I wanted to ask is like, what do you think about the Bauhaus movement when you were studying in bachelor's? Like, I'm sure
everyone will be introduced about this.
You're definitely taught in some architecture history or something like that. Like, what do you actually think about the Bauhaus movement at the time?
So how do I got to know about this Bauhaus movement is definitely from my lecturer. She actually introduced through like the architecture history and culture. So saying about the simple geometry, the colors. This is actually kind of like a new thought of me thinking of art. And I mean art, because at the time I was still new to architecture, so all I know is that like art, like how paintings or how drawings or should look like, or should look like pretty or nice or not. But at the time they actually introduced, actually art could be another sense of symmetrical, geometrical shapes, colors, and even like the most important thing is like how do you want to like try out with these simple components into something that you want to express. So this is how I thought about at that time. This is what I thought about Bauhaus or art at that time.
I'm not sure whether it's a lectural problem or maybe it's just me or something. It's like, I mean, I was introduced to Bauhaus movement, same thing. I mean, it's architecture history and whatnot, but in the end, what I learned from it, I mean, I actually get from water. I mean, I was taught about water gropiers, and then they show us the Bauhaus building.
Yeah.
I mean, in the pictures, the Bauhaus building doesn't look magnificent. Doesn't look. I mean, my first impression of the Bauhaus building is that it's ugly.
Okay.
But I mean, it's just maybe the pictures they used to show us. Because when I was studying, maybe internet wasn't really that frequently used as now. Yeah. I mean, it is. You can use it. I mean, there's even a IT center in Taohui for me to go and
research. Bauhaus.
I mean, internet. There's internet there, but it's not like now there we can use our phones everywhere and you stream research, And so I was basically a lazy student and I don't do research. So I need to see whatever the lecturer show us. And I actually felt that Bauhaus to me that time was ugly, and I didn't accept any of their teaching because how they teach is just like, oh, you should be minimalist.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe it's
true.
Maybe it's also like what you say is that maybe I don't know, it's the lecturer or what.
Yeah, but
he trying to like just emphasize the thing that she wants to tell you. I
actually feel that it's more like they're just trying to show how it looks. They don't really teach about what they teach and why they are doing such things and whatnot. It's just like, oh, this is the Bauhaus movement, and it's basically about form follow function, and it turns out to be looking like this, like the Bauhaus building, and it never after that. I mean, she also talked about like Mies van der Rohe and the international style, but she doesn't relate this international style and. I'm not sure whether it's a she or he. I don't remember anymore. But basically, he or she doesn't relate the international style and the Bauhaus movement. And I actually felt that the international style it looked really good. Or maybe not really the international style, but like Mies van der Rohe's things and his museums and maybe he's not really his glass rectangular box. But although it is relevant today, but I mean, I just don't want to say that that's the thing that inspired me. And the Farnsworth House and all those things. Maybe I'm not sure what to say about it, but,
everyone's introduction to Bauhaus definitely throughout from the lecturers. For example, I have friends who study graphics, advertising. So still has to know about.
Maybe that's what I was trying to say. It's not like in the end, the most important thing about the Bauhaus is basically the thinking, not really about how the building looks.
Yes.
Like the Bauhaus building, for example, like how I was taught about it. It's more about how people think about all this. Yeah. So
any more questions?
I think that's all for this episode. And we are reaching our time anyway.
Yeah. I have last words. Do you have last words?
Yeah, I mean, you can go ahead as a conclusion. Yeah.
Okay. So I would say Bauhaus idea is not just a design philosophy that influenced art, but rather more precise, it influenced the world into a new revolution of human mankind. So the very, very last this is a quote that I really like when I researched through the article. It's like, you don't need to like the Bauhaus. You might well be sitting on it.
You don't have to like it, but in the end, you're using it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, you have your last word, Matt?
I actually found it quite interesting reading about all this. I mean, even studying beside the Bauhaus, I think we even discussed it last time. Like, is it actually the original one is Weimar or the Dessau? We never knew. And then all I heard is rumors from here and there. And then I thought maybe it's the Dessau, maybe it's Weimar or something. But
it's all original.
Yeah, it's all original. Yeah. But basically, the building in the Dessau, the one we see every time, is also like it's really the real building. Although
it's real, but it's function as a museum right now.
Yeah.
And the Weimar.
Actually, it is still a school.
It's still a school, but
only some parts of it.
Yeah.
And also a hotel.
Yeah, there's a hotel next to it. Yeah, it's 100 years there.
It's not next to it. It's actually.
It's inside.
It's inside.
Yeah, they've already renovate,
yeah,
refurbish everything. If you have time to come to Germany, and it's 100 years Bauhaus this year, you should.
Actually, that's one thing I actually found very interesting. I mean, in Germany, if you go back to Malaysia, if you ask anyone that's not art related about Bauhaus, they'll be like, "What is it?" Like I asked when my mom came here to visit me for the convocation. It's like.
Yeah,
you study this building, it's like normal.
Exactly, no one know about Bauhaus. I mean, to say no one is.
But in Germany, you actually see a lot of like just regular folks, like older, all white hair people. They just come and visit the Bauhaus. Like, it's very interesting.
Okay.
And I feel a lot of people. I mean, I've actually talked to a few. I'm not sure whether they're Germans, but people staying here. And they actually all know about. Like, I tell them, I studied in this. Oh, Bauhaus.
Definitely, they know. It's like what I told you. Is like the story behind it. The influence of Bauhaus is so big that why the people at that time the Germans actually rejected, because it's just influencing too much. It's so un-German. Definitely everyone in Germany will know about.
I mean, to me, it's just interesting in a way that how people look at architecture differently over here compared to Malaysia. Maybe one day it will change.
Yeah.
Malaysia is all about. Now, if I ask my dad, why would you want to choose this condo to stay in? Because it's how many square meters. The living room is here, and then that's all.
3 rooms, 1 living.
It doesn't matter about like all this, like sitting high, how many windows, how's the windows, and how much the door.
Yeah,
it's like
true.
As long as this amount of square meters and it's affordable, okay, that's it. So basically we have to end here.
Yeah, and if you have chance to come to Germany and you're still in Berlin, we can join you a trip to Dessau and visit the Bauhaus together. Okay. Thank you for listening this episode.
And once again, if you have any comments or anything about maybe you want to add on or ask or anything,
share your thoughts.
Yeah, share your thoughts. And comment wherever you listen to this.
Yes.
But actually, can you comment on Spotify?
No.
Okay, then just go to YouTube and comment there.
Yes, YouTube. Yeah.
Or Facebook also is possible. Okay. Yeah. So thanks for listening and
see you next week.
See you again. Yeah.